So welcome. Those that have not had breakfast, please, we encourage you to have your breakfast. We're about to start the program. Our chief guest is already in the room, so please be ready and prepared. So please have your breakfast so that we can set you for the program. Thank you very much. That's okay now. I beg your attention, please. I beg your attention, please. Thank you very much. Our chief guest, Professor Margaret Kobia, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizens Affairs, and Special Programs, represented by Honorable Beatrice Selachi, Chief Administrative Secretary, State Department for Public Service, board members present, CEOs present in the room, our Board Diversity and Inclusion Report partners, that is Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Nairobi Securities Exchange, New Faces, New Voices Trust. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning once again. Thank you very much. My name is Tom Onguru, Head of Strategic Business Units at the Kenya Institute of Management. It's my humble pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this very, very important event when we are launching the 2021 Board Diversity and Inclusion Report, a report that has been brought together lots of effort, a lot of sacrifices, championed by the Kenya Institute of Management in partnership with the organizations that I've just mentioned, KEPSA, NSC, New Faces, New Voices Trust. And so today marks a great day for us. It's a great milestone that we have because we are now kind of presenting to you the new baby. We want to thank you very much and of course appreciate the fact that you took your time to be here with us. And we want to thank you so much, Honorable Beatrice, in terms of getting time to be with us. We are not taking that for granted. And it's a clear indication that this is a cause that as a ministry, we are really supportive of this. And as partners of this great project, we thank you so much for that. Therefore, without much ado, as we said, this is a project that was championed by KIM, but also in partnership with the institutions that I've just mentioned. It's just fair that we give opportunity to respective CEOs and directors from these institutions to give their opening remarks. So to start off, I'd like to invite Mr. Geoffrey Odundo, the CEO of Nairobi Securities Exchange, just to give his opening remarks, and then we'll be able to take it up from there. Thank you. Mr. Odundo, please.
There's a platform here. Honorable Beatrice Selachi, representing the CS. Dr. Lydia Muriyoki, Chairperson, Kenya Institute of Management, Governing Council. Dr. Murithi Ndegwa, CEO, Kenya Institute of Management. Eva Moraya, a close friend of the NSC from Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Tony Kamere from the New Faces, New Voices Trust. James Lomeli, the Chairperson of the Gender Sector Board. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good morning. Good morning once again. So it really gives us great pleasure to join you this morning at the launch of the 2020-2021 Board Diversity Inclusion Report. Just yesterday we had a great webinar when we really tried to synthesize some of the discussions, and today then accumulates into even a better event that just builds on that. So the Nairobi Securities Exchange recognizes its crucial role in supporting economic growth by providing an efficient and sustainable capital markets. We want to ensure that women's full and effective participation and equal opportunity is provided at all levels of leadership in decision-making within corporate Kenya. While companies are indeed recognizing that advancing gender equality through business operations and value chains means better talent, higher productivity, more customers, and a stronger bottom line, progress remains still slow. So NSC is uniquely positioned to influence our market in ways that other actors can. So in today's business world, diversity, equity, inclusion is a priority at every facet of the organizations. I wish to commend the corporates in Kenya who have embraced this. And today, even as we launch this report, I think we're seeing very, very good data that does demonstrate that Kenya is actually really on track to even become a trailblazer in implementing diversity and inclusion at various levels. So just to mention, and I know this data will be coming through in the report, that women globally now hold 23% of board positions globally, while in Kenya, this now stands at 36%. Now that's a major, major achievement, and we must actually applaud ourselves for that level of success. And what's even more impressive is that it's an improvement from 21% in 2017. So in just less than 2 years, or rather in 2 years' time, we've actually been able to increase that. So this stands out for us as NSC, as we are purposed to push the needle forward on women representation within boards of listed companies. So 36% is still low, and we still believe that we can push this to 50-50 representation within boards and senior management. And CS, I believe, you will then borrow a lead from us at the national level, and we can actually show you how to implement it. So, so yeah, we really believe that this data is important, even just to inform other facets of our country in terms of implementation. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we call the DEI, are mutually reinforcing principles within an organization. Our focus on diversity alone is insufficient because employees' sense of belonging, which is inclusion, and experience of fairness, which is equity, is critically important. The NSC places special focus on enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion among listed companies, as well as advance the agenda across other private sector players. So in our webinar yesterday, we were actually able to demonstrate that if you look at the boards that are in the listed company space, most of these have got female representation, and they're just not sitting in committees that you would call soft committees or boards. I think they're now taking up even more challenging committees that include strategy, audit, and risk. And I can tell you from personal experience, the results are impressive. I happen to have chairs in my audit and risk committee, and those are two meetings that I must prepare very effectively for, because they read everything and anything. So the findings in this report will enable comparability analysis between companies and in various industries. In fact, if you look at that report, this time the population sample used is quite inclusive in both the public and private sectors, and will highlight areas where greater focus and transparency is needed. The insights will be useful to regulators, organizations, investors, and investors who are looking to add gender-specific focus to their portfolio. Today, when we speak to investors who are coming to the exchange, a lot of them have that question about diversity in terms of their vetting, and they're taking interest to invest in companies that embrace all that. Diversity, inclusion, sustainability, governance. And so we want to just encourage corporates to embrace this, not just as a good to have, but a very, very important to have going forward. So with that, I want to say NSC is happy to be partnered to this particular initiative, and we've always been there, and I'm sure even in the future we'll continue to support this very great initiative. Thank you very much, and I wish you well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odundo, for those very encouraging words. We really appreciate your leadership and, of course, the great partnership that we enjoyed in this report project. The fact that we started with NSC right from the beginning when we started this initiative, and we were able to access the public sector in terms of public institutions, and also even having on board KEPSA for private institutions. We really, really appreciate you as partners. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Eva Muraya, Director of Gender and SMEs at KEPSA. Madam Eva, please, you have our attention. I guess you need the stair.
And you know, Tom had told me there's no judgment, but so good morning, everybody. Good morning again. So thank you, Tom. Professor Margaret Kobia, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizens, Affairs and Special Programs, very ably represented by a dear friend, my sister, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Dr. Lydia Morioki, who I have reconnected with this morning and chairs the Kenya Institute of Management, Dr. Mureithi Ndegwa. Is this a good time for me to say we went to Alliance with Daktari? Ably running the Kenya Institute of Management, my very dear friend Jeff Odundo, the CEO of Nairobi Securities Exchange, Ms. Modoni Kamere, lovely to see you again, trustee at the New Faces, New Voices, and wonderful people in the room, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning again. So I'd like to begin by thanking all of you for finding time to join us today. We have waited for this day over many, many months and are really delighted to be here to launch the Board Diversity and Inclusion Study Report that seeks to enhance the business case for championing gender equality, inclusion, and empowerment of the special interest groups so that they are able to play a more active role in the country's socio-economic development. Just listening to Jeff, the case is made. And I'm delighted to just look through the insights that have showed up following the study. And this is the beginning of an incredible journey that we begin together. As the apex body of the private sector in Kenya, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance has been at the forefront in championing and advocating for the board diversity and inclusion agenda. This having been done through the Board Diversity Sector Board of the KEPSA Gender Sector Board. Now, you're beginning to say, how many things are going on in there? Our efforts are informed by the fact that diverse and inclusive boards of management, and has been ably articulated by my brother Jeff, tend to perform better in all aspects. Honorable Elachi, with your permission, let me just help you understand how seriously KEPSA has taken this work by introducing my colleagues in the room. Mucha Mlingo is our chair for the sector board. So at KEPSA, we've got about 18 sector boards. We run like the government of private sector. So there's 18 serious ministries there, okay? So today, the people in this room come from the ministry, that is your ministry, you're our line ministry, and Mucha Mlingo is our chair. She's out of the country traveling, so I know she's probably online and feeling quite green about not being here, but ably represented by Mercy Okiro. Please stand up, Mercy, and wave. Mercy is the vice chair, Honorable Elachi, and under Mercy, we have got several sub-teams. Today's sub-team is the Gender Board Diversity Subcommittee, ably led by our he for she, James Ngomeli. Please stand up and wave. Yeah, this is the kind of thing we want to see. He is the face of, yes, exactly, James Ngomeli, who has for many years run this as his passion because he truly believes in a diverse board. I want to also introduce Winnie Maru. Winnie, please stand up. Winnie runs our supplier diversity work, which is something that is dear to the heart of Professor Kobia. The AGPO work, working closely with the National Treasury. So Winnie has got her team running that. And then another that is very dear to your heart and the heart of our minister is the work around gender-based violence and mental health, ably run by Zuhura Odhiambo. Please stand and wave. Okay. All right. But we also find need for building the capacities of our teams. That work is ably run by my lovely jitaje jina hapo, Jackie Malomba, okay? She runs our capacity building work, and we're doing a lot of capacity building for SMEs, for gender-based communities. We have other people in the room working around the elderly. We've got elderly and differently abled. It's become a critical piece of work around our sector board, and the team lead is not in the room today. And then of course the team from the secretariat, the management team. Did I forget anybody critical? Yeah? So you can see everybody showed up because this is an important piece of work for us. So we applaud the tremendous progress that Kenya has made in recognizing the role of women in leadership and economic development by entrenching gender equality and protection of women's rights in law. And as a result, we have seen the number of women scaling the heights in both public and private sector leadership. And this has improved significantly over the last decade compared to our peers in the region. And I think, Jeff, you did a good job to help us remember that. A 2015 report by the African Development Bank showed that Kenya had the highest percentage of women in boards in Africa at 19.8%, followed by Ghana, which is at 17.7%, and South Africa at 17.4%, while the 2017 Board Diversity and Inclusion Survey by the Kenya Institute of Management and the NSE placed the number at 21%, up from 12% in 2012. And I think that really deserves some acknowledgement. So from this year's study, in which KEPSA and the New Faces, New Voices collaborated, the number has risen to a promising 36%. This is remarkable progress compared to the global average of 23.3%. So Honorable Elachi, we just must continue putting in the pressure, and putting in the work, and putting in the resources, and building the capacity so that we can get to that 50-50 desirable number. Age and ethnic diversity have also increased significantly over the last decade. In addressing some of the barriers that limit optimization of board diversity and inclusion, KEPSA is finalizing development of a policy framework for gender mainstreaming in the private sector to ensure inclusivity at corporate leadership and the workforce. We will be visiting you very, very shortly before the end of the year as KEPSA to appraise you on this work. We've been developing this over the last maybe 18 months or so, 2 years, and we're really, really delighted that we are at the tail end of that very exciting work so that KEPSA can have a benchmark of what a gender policy within private sector can look like. Additionally, KEPSA is undertaking a gender-based violence advocacy program in the private sector with an aim of creating an enabling environment for the elimination of GBV, scaling up evidence-driven prevention programming, and accessible services for survivors through private sector intervention to complement government efforts. This initiative, Your Honor, is supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and championed by the GBV and Mental Health Subsector Board of the KEPSA Gender Sector Board. We continue to encourage zero tolerance to GBV in the sector through raising awareness on different laws and policies on GBV, contributing to the formulation of laws and policies on GBV, and also formulating and adopting sector-based anti-GBV policies. We're confident that the results of this study, undertaken to realize the shared value in the potential of our organizations, will go a long way in strengthening the evidence base to inform scale-up and progressively boost the ambition for attainment of optimal diversity and inclusion in both public and private institutions. Therefore, we call to action all organizations to strengthen their efforts towards deliberately making diversity and inclusion a top priority through the following: developing, adopting and implementing diversity and inclusion policies, anchoring diversity strategies in a compelling business case, addressing barriers that inhibit diversity and inclusion, and utilizing an evidence-based approach towards bolstering diverse and inclusive boards. In closing, I just want to say that this, Mr. Muriithi, has been a delightful journey. KEPSA has enjoyed great team spirit from all the partners. We want to say asante sana to new faces, new voices, lots of innovative thinking as we walked the journey. NSC, you set the benchmark and you have held us together. And of course, KEPSA, with their capacity and energy, it was just nothing but a real delight to work together with you. So I salute all the partners, congratulations. We look forward to keeping this as a thematic thing that we will do annually. And I wish you all a lovely, lovely day. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Eva. Your passion is very infectious. When I grow up, I want to be like you. That's notwithstanding, I think you really helped us to see, where we've come from with this report. And I want to say we really appreciate you because remember in this, there was a technical committee. Of course, at some point, you'll be seeing them here. But I remember KEPSA, in fact, you were actually part of that meeting when we started all this, including Madam Catherine, and also support from NSC, support from new faces, new voices. We really appreciate that. So thank you to the government of KEPSA, many ministries, well noted, and I think this is a challenge that we are taking moving forward, that this partnership will really continue. So our next speaker is Ms. Mudhoni Kamere, a great partner here, a friend, and of course part of the technical team. Please, Mudhoni, come and give us your remarks. Thank you.
A very useful step. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Beatrice Elachi, representing Honorable Cabinet Secretary Professor Margaret Kobia, our partners at KIM, KEPSA, and the NSC, private and public sector organizations represented here, distinguished guests and stakeholders attending virtually and in person, media houses present. I would also like to recognize our NFNV trustee, Wangeshi Getata Kirigia. Please stand up and do the wave. And also our trustees and champions who are not able to attend in person but are attending virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of New Faces, New Voices this morning. We truly congratulate Kim on this report. We have been in the technical committee with my colleague Angie Gashui, who has had to leave for another appointment. But this has been a true test of our sweat and faith that this report would come to fruition, which it has. So thank you to Tom and to Martin, or James Martin James, really for driving this and getting us to where we are today. With results that have come through. Kenyan boards are more gender diverse than ever before. However, the Kim report findings highlight the knowledge gaps with respect to data relating to persons living with disabilities and ethnic diversity, suggesting a need to focus on and measure these metrics. At New Faces, New Voices, we are focused on designing data-driven programs where we have a clear direction on what is required by the beneficiaries in our sphere of influence. We collaborate with local and international partners to achieve our mandate, which is to increase women's access to finance and financial services, build the capacity and skills of African women to access finance as consumers, investors, and entrepreneurs, and increase the number, visibility, and influence of women in leadership and decision-making positions in the financial sector. The importance of diversity and inclusion in a rapidly changing world is clearly demonstrated by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to take its toll on economies and families globally. It has widened gender inequalities, with women and girls facing worsening economic and social fallout. Increased domestic violence cases have been reported in Kenya, including a rise in teenage pregnancies due to schools closure, negatively impacting future prospects for these girls. It has exposed vulnerabilities in social, economic, and political systems, directly worsening women's economic empowerment. Research findings from around the world confirm time and again that the disproportionate toll of the pandemic on women and their human and economic rights is undeniable. There are, however, important and significant gains reported. We have seen women rise as strong leaders. The Kim report will also highlight very positive findings. In addition, there has been a notable increase in the urgency to have discussions on family-friendly policies, concern over the risk of the current setbacks being experienced by women and girls becoming permanent, and the time required to close the gender gap increasing from 100 to 136 years in the space of 12 months, as reported by the World Economic Forum's 2021 Global Gender Gap Report, published in March 2021. And the economic gender gap, which is now not expected to close until the year 2288. If you need to use your calculators, go ahead, but I shall help you. That is 267 years from now. Research has previously been carried out on board diversity in NSE-listed companies and state corporations. We are particularly pleased that this report has gone further and provided us with data on the board diversity in 112 privately held companies, which is approximately 1/3 of KEPSA members and more than the number of companies listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The increasing focus on economic, social, and governance principles in board agendas is welcome. Investors are focused on corporate governance issues, and particularly board and workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has led them to include this metric in their investment analysis when they seek to invest capital. Organizations will therefore need to align themselves so as to access this capital. Research published in the Harvard Business Review this year highlights that changing who leads will transform how we do business, and adding women to the C-suite changes how companies think. Based on analysis of more than 150 companies, the authors of this report find that after women join the top management teams, firms become more open to change and less open to risk. The Credit Suisse Gender 3000 report outlines the gender breakdown of 33,000 senior executives from over 3,000 companies across 46 countries. The report published earlier this month demonstrates that gender diversity in the boardroom and senior management continues to grow globally, recording an increase of 8.9% between 2015 and 2021. It is clear that leaders understand the necessity of diverse, more inclusive teams. However, the progress to achieve the how needs to accelerate. Our private and public companies need to embrace the full range of society and consider the diversity of thought required in the boardroom in order to develop implementable initiatives which will have the required impact of an inclusive society where all groups on the diversity spectrum are represented. For us at New Faces, New Voices, new opportunities have presented themselves. Programs which may have taken months to plan have been accelerated with the use of technology and increased our reach beyond in-person events in Nairobi to virtual attendees across Kenya, the region, and participants in different time zones. We have demonstrated our capability and agility to work with multiple partners on multiple projects by leaning on our networks. For instance, we have just completed a series of 5 knowledge exchange forums in partnership with Netherlands-based non-profit organization Women Win. The series has engaged Kenyan-based women's rights and private sector organizations to review how the resilience of women's economic rights in relation to workplace, policy development, leadership, and advocacy has fared on the ground during the pandemic, and the policies and frameworks we can put in place that will support women and vulnerable groups beyond the pandemic and in times of crisis in future. The information we have gathered is rich, and it is clear that we are all singing from the same hymn sheet. We just need to fine-tune our coordinated advance. Senior executives need to be involved in the movement to drive through change for workforce inclusion. Having a diverse workforce will eventually be reflected in the boardroom, and the pipeline leaks less, and talent rises through the ranks to take up C-suite roles and board seats. According to the Chartered Governance Institute in the UK, and I quote, "The need for greater board gender diversity is recognized worldwide as a significant contributing factor to creating the best possible diversity of thought within the boardroom. Different countries may be taking different paths and at a different pace, but they are all working towards the goal of fair and equal treatment and opportunities for women to serve on boards. It is also clear that board gender diversity is now recognized as not an issue of equality between men and women, but also a contribution to more effective boards, corporate performance, and to maintaining a social license to operate. An inclusive approach to board design and composition should result in a diverse board with diversity of thoughts where consenting and dissenting views are welcome. A board that is better equipped to respond to changes and challenges. Lastly, how long will it take for us to achieve equality and inclusion in our boardrooms, workforce, and supply chains? It will be challenging, but we just need to be intentional in our concerted effort and stay focused. Keep that foot on the gas. The last 18 months have shown us that we have the ability to keep moving forward, even in the hardest of times. We therefore need to recommit daily to this marathon and significantly reduce some of the undesirable benchmarks set to achieve equality. We need to accelerate our action. Therefore, today we must choose to challenge in order to achieve our shared goals. Thank you for your kind attention.
So thank you very much, Mudoni. That was very, very inspiring. And of course, you've shared with us very, very important statistics. We are happy that you are a partner in this very, very important project. You've had some initiatives around the same, the Equilab report, and we are allowed to borrow also from the initiatives that you've had in place. So thank you very much. Again, for those hearing about new faces, new voices, not that their faces are new, this is a network of women in finance. So if you go through the reports, we have actually captured the profile of each of these partner organizations. So please, you can be able to learn more about us. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your support. And of course, this network, this partnership will move forward years to come. Now, again, we encourage you, those in the room, please don't think that we have gaps. We have over 100 participants connected online. So again, because of COVID protocols, so don't think this is the only team. When I checked with the ICT manager, there were 116. So please, this is the new norm that we're operating in. So please tweet about it. Our hashtags, we have 3. KM Board Diversity Report 2021. KM Board Diversity Report 2021. We shared this when we shared the links. The other hashtag there is Board Diversity Report 2021, and the last one, Diversity and Inclusion. So please, as you tweet about this, just tag us. Again, that is the new normal. Remember, we have hundreds watching us, so please, thank you very much. We have to be very careful about the COVID protocols. Now, our next speaker, so that we move and manage time, we have Ms. Zuhura Odhiambo. KEPSA, GBV, and mental health subsector lead. We really appreciate you. So, Zora, please come on board, have our attention, and of course, we also appreciate the support, the sponsorship that you also gave us. This is something you're not taking for granted, so please come on board.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. As KEPSA, here we are again, a small government, as Eva stated. Amazing to be here this morning to discuss the board and diversity inclusion topic, and we'll never go without the GBV element because we realize it's trickled into our offices, and of course, we are here to ensure that boards are actually taking that into space and being able to deal with it. Good morning. Professor Margaret Corbier, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizens Affairs, and Special Program, of course, represented by Honorable Beatrice Elachi, CAS, State Department of Public Service, Ms. Eva Muraya, my senior mentor, KEPSA Gender SME Director, Dr. Muridi Ndegwa, Executive Director and CEO of Kenya Institute of Management, Mr. Geoffrey Odundo, Chief Executive Officer, Nairobi Securities Exchange, Ms. Mudhoni Kamere, Trustee, New Faces, New Voices Trust, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm delighted to take part in the launch of the 2020-2021 Board Diversity Study Report, coming at a time when we are scaling our efforts towards attaining diversity and inclusivity in all the spheres of the economy. Allow me to highlight what the Kenya Private Sector Alliance is undertaking to promote ethical business and working environment by ensuring zero tolerance on GBV. GBV, in a big way, leads disappropriate representation of women in leadership positions. Notably, having women in leadership is critical in the campaign against GBV, as it opens up the safe space and platform for women facing violence to report and break the silence. KEPSA, under the Generation Equality Forum Action Coalition for GBV, and in partnership with Belinda and Melinda Gates Foundation, is currently taking a GBV advocacy program in the private sector, as Eva had stated. The intervention is with an aim of creating an enabling environment for the elimination of GBV, scaling up evidence-driven prevention programming, and accessible services for survivors through the private sector intervention. As a member of the National Steering Committee under the Generation Equality Forum process, KEPSA has participated in national GEF advocacy convening with the aim of solidifying and raising awareness on our commitment of promoting the gender integration into the private sector. Against this background, we are finalizing a baseline study that will seek to provide insights on the prevalence of GBV in the private sector, its strengths and impact on productivity. The study has examined the adoption and implementation of GBV-related laws and policies in the private sector, recommendation measures that are needed to build a business case in GBV management, and also the response. Some of our preliminary findings from this study have revealed that the prevalence of GBV in the private sector is relatively high. GBV increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. The private sector lacks strong mechanisms for tracking GBV-associated losses, making it difficult for individual companies to build strong cases for their investing in GBV programs. Verbal and physical abuse are leading workplace GBV. Sexual harassment and intimidation are also prevalent. Despite the existence of policies and legislative frameworks, plans and programs addressing GBV cases at workplaces still abound, with women employees being the most affected. Reporting of GBV cases at the workplace remain low. and many survivors report more to their colleagues rather than to the designated focal points. This makes tracking cases of GBV and harassment a challenge to many companies. Many companies have not invested in training and sensitization of staff on the GBV and existing policies, including reporting procedures. A significant number of companies have not adopted and implemented GBV-related policies such as the anti-sexual harassment policy, and those who have adopted are yet to sensitize their staff about them. In order to complement the effort of Generation Equality Forum in Kenya, and as member of the GBV Coalition, we call upon the members of the private sectors to adopt a right-based approach. The private sector organizations should champion for the non-tolerance of the GBV at the workplace for a human rights-based approach to complement the legal requirements and compliance perspective. We should also ensure the policies to protect employees from GBV are shared and understood by all employees and should be included in the inclusion policy for new employees, including clear compliance and case revolving mechanism. We also recommend the bridging the gap in reporting awareness in the case of GBV or any other misconduct in the workplace by continued awareness across board. We also recommend strengthening coordination on the elimination of GBV and harassment, the collaborations and campaigns beyond the immediate workplace, including forming a coalition that would advocate and campaign for the elimination of the GBV acquis. There is also need to engage men in the GBV management and prevention as champions and allies in the private sector intervention aimed at achieving a GBV-free society. As I conclude, I'd like to end by saying there's no equality without empowerment, and there is no empowerment without knowledge. Let us continue sharing, learning, and improving as we allow research and data to guide our quest for the realization of the SDG number 5 on gender equality and women empowerment. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Zuhura. That was really powerful. I mean, we need such a voice to actually put a case against GBV, and I think I'm a lead voice enhancer so that when I grow up, I can speak like you. When I was starting my career over some 22 years ago in customer care, a client will call and I explain, of course, I've introduced myself, I'm Tom, and then at the end of the conversation, the client will say, "Thank you, madam," because of my small voice. So my friend Gomeli in marketing will tell you it's a service with a smile, and I think he's heavily there because he's actually supporting this in KEPSA, actually presenting a case against GBV. So thank you very much. That was very, very powerful. We appreciate it. So it comes to that time that we say the rubber meets the road, and so we want to now just have a glimpse of the report. And this is a presentation of the report, Board Diversity and Inclusion Research Report. So to take us through this is Mr. James Martin, KIM Strategy and Development Manager. So James, please, you have our attention.
Good morning. Our chief guest, Professor Margaret Kobia, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizen Affairs and Special Program, who is represented by Honorable Business K. Elachi, Chief Administrative Secretary, State Department for Public Service, Kim Governing Council members present, CEOs present, our Board Diversity and Inclusion Report 2021 partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. It's my pleasure to present to you the Board Diversity and Inclusion Report 2021, and my name is Martin James. I'm the Manager, Strategy and Development. In terms of the content, my presentation is broadly categorized in 7 sections. This is about KIM, key researches on board diversity and inclusion, partners for 2020-2021 study, methodology and assumption of the studies, related global studies, 2021 research findings, and conclusion and call to action. And about KIM, we are a professional organization that was established in 1954 to offer solutions in membership, research, training and consultancy, and just to mention that we are the sponsor of the Management University of Africa. Talking about our researches on board diversity and inclusion, as KIM, we have tracked this topic ever since 2012, where we used to track only one variable, and that was gender diversity in the boards. But over time, we have progressed to 2015, 2017, and now 2021, where we are studying more variables because we have realized that board diversity and inclusion is not just a matter of gender diversity. So in terms of the statistics, we have witnessed significant growth at 12% in 2012, 18% in 2015, 21% in 2017, and 23% in 2019. And this was as per the survey that was done by Equilib in collaboration with NSC. And in terms of the aim for our studies, it's basically to provide a statistical outlook that usually informs our policy on diversity and inclusivity in the country, and just to promote oneness within the country. And secondly, our leadership and governance researches, they usually target to help in the realization of UN's Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is achieving gender equality on all women and girls. And we are also aware about the UN's gender and girls empowerment principle that is in existence, which is encouraging corporate leaders to support this notion of bringing gender equality at the workplace. Talking about the overview of the 2020-2021 study, we studied 8 key variables. We had gender, age, education level, professional background, nationality, ethnicity, region and persons with disability. And the main effect was to examine how these individual variables are affecting organization performance, decision making, and productivity. And we sampled both private and public companies, unlike in the past where we have been surveying the NSC listed companies. So in this case, we increased the sample size to include also the state corporations and also the private companies. In terms of data source, we use secondary data and also primary data that was administered with the help of our partners between December 2020 in March 2021. And at this juncture, I would like to recognize our partners who have been very pivotal in supporting this cause. We had KIM, who was championing the process. We had Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Nairobi Securities Exchange, and Women New Faces, New Voices. Sorry. And at this juncture, allow me to also recognize our technical team that was driving this study all the way from data collection to data analysis and to this launch. And these were members that were drawn from the 4 partners. And at this juncture, I would like to just mention their names, and they will stand and wave at the audience. So we have from KIM, we have Ms. Mildred Machibe. Please wave to the crowd. We have Mr. Raymond Mwangi. We have Mr. Tom Onguru. And from KEPSA, we have Mr. James Komeli. We have Ms. Caroline Kawera. From NSC, we have Ms. Waidera Moi. And from New Faces, New Voices, we have Ms. Modoni Kamere. And also Ms. Angie Kashui. So far, our acknowledgement to her. Talking about the methodology that was used to design this research, we applied Crazy and Morgan 1970 sampling approach, and this is a technique that is used in the determination of sample size from a given population. So in terms of the population, we had 585 companies, and these were drawn from private, public, and NSC listed companies, like I had said. And in terms of like specific sample size contribution to this survey, we were targeting 97 public companies, 196 private companies, and 52 listed companies. And in terms of statistical analysis, we did frequencies, correlation tests, test of differences, and comparative models, and this was aided by using general linear modeling technique. Talking about the assumptions that were made during the study, we had 3 in number. Number 1, and we realized that in all studies or in any kind of a research study, you have to have assumptions to support your cause. So in this case, we had 3. And number 1, there was slow or no movement of board members in target companies. And by this, we wanted to assume that there were no major changes in terms of the data that we were collecting, and in terms of the distribution of the board members in the companies that we are targeting. Secondly, revenue, profit, and cost are majorly the main drivers or measures of our performance and productivity. And in our studies, we had to also include this assumption. And lastly, a sample size of 345 companies was a representative of the whole population, that is 585, and to an extent, the Kenyan companies or the companies working in the Kenyan setup. And by this, I want to mean that using the sample size of 345 companies, this would have enhanced the generalization of the findings just to capture what is happening in the country. Talking about the latest global studies that we were benchmarking with, there were a number. we had Econzenda, we had IFC, McKinsey and Company, PwC, Harvard Business Review, and these have been quoted by previous speakers, Deloitte, Diligent Insights, Boston, and also Equally. And now, moving forward to our 2020-2021 research findings. In terms of our service participation, we had 193 companies participating, and this was out of the 345 companies that we were targeting. And speaking from a statistical perspective, is that you realize that usually like we work with the population, and then we narrow down to a sample size, because it's usually hard to to engage the whole population unless you are working with a small sample size or a small population. That's why we have to narrow down to a sample size, a given sample size, and then out of that sample size, that's what we usually evaluate, and then we usually record the responses. And in most of the cases, you cannot manage to obtain 100% representation or participation in the survey, and in this case, owing to the sensitivity of the data that we were collecting. So we managed to obtain 103 responses, and in terms of distribution, we had private companies majorly sampled from KEPSA members, leading at 57%, and by this I mean, out of the 106 companies that we were sampling, we managed to get 112 from these private companies. And I think we need to acknowledge and appreciate these guys from KEPSA. From NSC, or from listed companies, we were targeting 52. We managed to record responses, or 41 responses, and this was 79% representation. And you notice that because of the smaller size of the population, that's why we had that higher percentage, indicating that there was a higher participation. But in overall, we acknowledge this participation, and we also want to acknowledge the support that we obtained from our partners, that is in the NSC. Let's also appreciate them. And lastly, we had public companies. We had 40 of them, but participating in our survey out of the targeted 97. And you realize that this is a new area that we have never tapped in, and that's why maybe there was a low turnout, or there was a low participation, and there's a need to encourage maybe participation from this sector, just to enhance that we are moving in the right direction from a public perspective and also private companies perspective. Talking about the company characteristics, this is the frequencies of the companies that participated, or the frequencies of the companies that participated in the survey. And we had companies from the banking and financial services leading at 26%, and then you had companies under the education sectors, or institutions under the education sectors, following at 16.3%, all the way to transport and logistics, which was represented at 4.7%. Talking about respondent characteristics, these were people with considerable knowledge in this area, and this was mainly driven in the need, or by the need to obtain objective data that would have informed the development of this report. So we sampled knowledgeable people, and these was responses that we recorded. And in terms of the executive directors and the CEOs, they led at that 1.4% representation, followed by board of directors at 15.7%, and C-suite, followed by managers at 26%, and the rest. And talking about board diversity, and inclusion policies that are promoting the agenda in the country, we studied different parameters, and the parameter included all the way from recruitment, having board policies, and ensuring that also the C-suite is promoting this idea of diversity and inclusion. And from our results, we observed that companies are encouraging people of different backgrounds to apply for this position, and this was leading at 97%. And also, companies were having board diversity and inclusion policy, which is a great milestone towards promoting this agenda within the country. Talking about the board on gender diversity and inclusion in the Kenya, from the results we observed a significant progress from 23% in 2019, and this was according to a survey by Equally, to the current statistics that is 6%, and which is an increment of about 13% compared to only 2% between 2017 and 2019. And these are a great milestone, and I think we need to appreciate our country and our leaders. Globally, this has been said, gender diversity and inclusion stands at 23.3%, and this is up from 20.4% in 2019, and this is according to a latest survey by Urban Gender report in 2020. In terms of the leading companies, or the leading countries, we have New Zealand, France, and Norway. And in terms of the specific statistics, New Zealand is leading at 45%, France at 43%, and Norway at 39%. So you can just internalize and see how many, or what we need to do just to be able to be leading in the world. Because if the first one is leading at 45% and we are at that 6%, that means that we are doing better compared to global companies or to international or to other states. Yes, moving forward to board chair positions held by women in Kenya. This has increased over the last 4 years from 7.7% in 2017 to 21% in 2021. And you can only imagine that globally, women only hold 3.0% of the chairperson's position worldwide. You can compare 21 versus 3%. Talking about female representation in the C-suite in Kenya, there was a growth of 11% since the last survey in 2017. A growth of 11%, since the last survey in 2017 to that 7% in 2021. And globally, female representation in the C-suite is at 21%. And this is according to a survey in 2019 by McKinsey and Company. So you can also see how Kenya is faring on compared to the global competitors. In terms of age diversity and inclusion of board members in Kenya, we realized that most of the board members are aged between 46 to 55 years. And in terms of the average age, there's a great improvement, or I can put it in this way, that our board is on a daily basis becoming younger as we are moving forward. Because in the last study, on average, the board members were aged at 55.8 years, and that was 2017. And currently, the board, or the average age of the board members is at 47.6 years. So it means our board is about 7-point-something years younger as compared to what it was in 2017. And we see the effect that comes with the age in terms of performance and other variables. Talking about education, diversity and inclusion, globally, the statistics say that most of the board members have bachelor's degree and master's, followed by master's degree, and that was at 6% and 14.3% respectively. And coming to our country, we are observing the same trend that for most of the board members are having bachelor's and master's qualification. And comparing between 2017 and 2021 study, we noted a kind of congruence in terms of the results, except for the drop that was recorded for the board members who are having master's qualification. And you will note that in 2017, we had that 5%, but in 2021, these are reduced to 16.6%. And it's something that we need to worry about, because in as far as we may say that globally that most board members are having bachelor's degrees, we should not be going backward to where we have come from. We should be moving forward. Yes, and we should be aiming to move forward and improving on our statistics and not going downward. Talking about professional diversity and inclusivity of both in Kenya, we realize that with time, most of the professions or new professions are coming or are being considered in the composition of the board. And in 2017, we had accounting professionals, business managers, legal, banking, being highly included in the board composition in most of the countries. Within the country. But in 2021, we noted that human resource professionals are now being included. And in terms of the statistics, you will see that in 2017, human resource contributed to some low extent into board composition, but in 2021, this has grown to 12%. So they are coming from a less significant representation to 12%. Regarding accounting professionals, in 2017, they were leading at 13% representation, and in 2021, they are at 16% representation, and they are leading also in terms of board composition. Business managers, in 2017, they were the second at 13%, but in 2021, they are now also leading because they are tying with the accounting professionals at 16%. HR, like I explained earlier, they had a less significant contribution to both in 2017, but now this has shifted to 12%. In terms of legal persons, in 2017, they contributed to 12% of board composition, but in 2020, this has dropped to 10%. And for the bankers or for the banking professionals, in 2017, they were leading, or they were also appearing in terms of the board composition, and they were at 11%. But at this particular moment, they are contributing to a lower or to a less extent in terms of board composition. Talking about nationality, diversity, and inclusivity of boards, globally, and here we benchmark with the US, the minority constitute 22% of board members. And by speaking about minorities, these are the African American, Asian, and Hispanics. and this is according to a survey that was done by Spencer Stewart Index in 2019. And locally, our findings noted that the non-Kenyans only constitute 11%, and in other words, like the Kenyans constitute 89% of the boards of the Kenyan companies. Compared to 2017, this was a drop of 9%, and in other words, this could be meaning that we are not, or as a country, we are not appointing like foreigners or non-Kenyans in our board. And this may be dependent on the statistics, could have some impact which would be supported by further statistics. In terms of diversity and inclusivity, from our results, we noted that top 5 ethnic groups are majority in most boards. And by top 5, this was classified or clustered based on the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics 2019 census. And in regards to a global outlook, we noticed that there are countries that have imposed regulations that have barred leaders identifying themselves in terms of race, in terms of ethnicity, and the impact is it makes it very hard to track this parameter because people are trying to promote oneness and they have barred this identification by ethnicity and also other variables. Talking about diversity and inclusivity of boards in Kenya, in terms of the region, we noted that globally, or at a global scale, studies are very limited, and we could not find any particular study that we could benchmark with. And locally, in our country, we found that from the participating companies, most of their boards were constituted by Christians, and this was represented at 81%, which in terms of the frequency, it's about 146% of the 193 companies that were participating. And this is despite a continuous increase in discrimination based on the region, the dress code, the food that people are eating at our workplaces, and other things. In terms of persons with disabilities, inclusion in Kenyan board, unfortunately, we could not collect, or we did not collect sufficient data that could warrant or help us to make deductive conclusions regarding this parameter. And this is despite this topic gaining a global attention. And you can see, like on the flip side, we don't have any sufficient data to make any deductive conclusions. And this is not only in Kenya, because also at global level, there's no data regarding this group or this study parameter. And delving into the advanced analysis, and here we wanted to study about the impact of diversity and inclusion variables, all the 8, on performance, decision making, and productivity. And here I'll take you to a statistics class. And just for the statistician in the house, just to explain that we were using correlation or Pearson correlation coefficient, that we were testing its significance at a p-value of 0.05. And by this I mean, when the p-value was more than 0.5, we were saying that there is no association, there is no significant relationship between different variables that we are studying. And this was the general criteria that we were using. And then on top of this, we went into testing the test of differences And I will give an example maybe of a gender variable where, according to our constitution, we normally speak of a third role. Yes, so what we are doing is taking all those companies that had more than a third, or at least a third and above, like female representation in the board, and we are comparing with companies that had less than a third or no in the board. So in depth or in details, we wanted to prove this statistic, and that's why we were running the test of differences, just to see if there is any difference between those groups that were having a third and above, or those groups that were not having a third and above. So in terms of the gender variable, our results reveal that there is a positive association between gender and performance. And among the 8 variables, gender was coming as the major driver of performance in this case. In terms of age, diversity and inclusion, here we were testing between different age cohorts that we had subdivided, and we were using the same criteria that I had explained earlier. And our results revealed that in terms of age, there is an inverse relationship, and by this I mean, as age increases, performance decreases. That's quite interesting. Yes, and these results of age having an inverse relationship are similar to another result that had been done by PwC in 2017 in another company named Citylytics 2019. Talking about education, our results reveal that to some extent, education affects, or there is a positive relationship between education level and performance. Talking about national origin or nationality, we also found that it also drives performance. And if you can remember, I posed a question that now that our nationals or the non-Kenyans are reducing the board from 20% in 2017 to 11% in 2021, could this be impacting into the performance of our organizations? Because from these statistics, this in-depth analysis, you can see that nationality also drives performance of boards. That's something that we need to think about. And in terms of other variables, here we have the region, persons with disabilities, ethnicity. The results reveal that they had insignificant of affecting the decision-making process, and there was a positive association between gender diversity and inclusion and decision-making processes. And by this, it means that the more we bring ladies on the table, the better the decisions we are ready to make as companies. And just to mention that we were measuring decision-making processes, or the sub-factors that we are measuring for the decision-making process, we were using compounded annual cost savings, timely and sound decisions made, and also easy communication within a company. And in terms of age diversity and decision-making process, our study noted that there is also an inverse relationship between this variable and the decision-making process. And at this point, I would pose a question. Maybe now that age is the statistics have proven that age is inversely affecting productivity or decision-making processes and performance, would it be like prompting us to think that we should be bringing the young people on board as compared to what the norm has been within the country? And on other variables, that is education, religion, ethnicity, nationality, and persons with disability, they had less significant effect on the decision-making process. And by this, I would like to expand a bit. The statistics that we were getting for the persons coalition were very low, and then they were, in terms of the p-value, it was greater than 0.05, just for the sake of the statisticians who are in the house. And in terms of board diversity and inclusion in driving productivity, we also noted a similar trend that gender is the key driver compared to other variables in terms of productivity. And age also had a negative or an inverse relationship with against this variable, that is the productivity, and the rest factors had insignificant effects. Now, coming to conclusion and from my presentation, we can all agree from the statistics that gender diversity is the main driver of board performance, decision making, and productivity. Secondly, there is an inverse relationship between age, performance, decision making, and productivity. And by this, there have been so many studies that have been talking about this interesting relationship, where particularly they usually say that the performance of a person, of a board member will increase up to a certain optimal point. That is, in terms of age, saying, assuming the optimal point is 60, up to a certain optimal point, and then after that, it starts declining. And this warrants a question whether we should continue having this notion of having more board members who are past some age, and having less of the younger board members. So this is something that we need to think about, and maybe try and improve this notion that for a person to be a board member, they have to be of a certain age, because statistics are revealing that there is an inverse relationship. And you see one of the benefits of the results that we have discovered is that the younger the board, the more innovative it's likely to become in terms of performance. It will increase performance and also drive productivity. In other words, it's the flip side. I know here you're finding it hard to understand. Assuming we take a rough age at 70, if you go past 70, your performance or productivity will start declining. And if you come lower than 70, your performance is likely to be increasing. So there's that inverse relationship, and it usually happens that the performance will grow up to a certain optimal age, and then it will start declining. That education level and nationality was found to drive performance, but interestingly, it was not affecting decision making and also productivity. You can see another interesting relationship between education and these variables, and maybe there's a need for further research, or this calls for further research, just to understand what is happening, that education would drive performance, and we all know that performance is usually tied to productivity. But how would this be happening? But it is the statistics that are revealed this, so there's a need for more research on this variable, just to identify on what is really happening in terms of education level and nationality. disabilities are currently studied, despite this attracting global scale attention, and this warrants a need for more research. And talking about specific actions that are both corporate, non-corporate, private, public sectors need to implement, we have 4 recommendations from the results. And number 1, companies should aim to continue propagating a culture of diversity, and this can be done through collecting, storing, and sharing best practices from companies that have promoted this idea. And also this can be promoted through holding strategic training that are geared towards promoting efforts in creating awareness of this topic. Second, companies should engage in D&I or diversity and inclusion activities. And among these activities, we have trying to at least achieve the other rule that is stipulated in our constitution, joining or trying to propagate or to implement the UN principles for gender equality, trying to create awareness within the community about a need for inclusivity and diversity. And talking about number 3, the results have shown that age diversity needs to be reinforced in the boards. And I know from the assumption or from the norm, we have been tempted to ignore age diversity when it comes to board appointment. But now the statistics have revealed that there is an interesting relationship which warrants engagement of this group in boards, just to incorporate the ideas and productivity and performance. And lastly, companies should set and benchmark and constantly track their progress. By this I mean maybe by tracking the efforts that the companies have been implementing in regards to promoting this idea of diversity and inclusion. Things to do with researches, or things to do with when it comes to recruitment. After recruitment, what else usually happens within the cadre, or what usually happens? Maybe you recruit at C-suite and the person grows all the way to board members. Do you usually, or do companies usually have these policies to ensure that this topic is not only being taught at the high level, it's being cascaded at the junior level? So these are more or less the things that we are supposed to do so that we can drive this agenda within the country. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. That brings us to the end of the presentation.
So thank you very much, James, for that presentation. We really appreciate, and of course, I guess you can now understand that there's a lot of work that went into that whole process, and we really thank our partners, the technical team, for making this success. We have another gift for you. For those of us that were straining to see the fonts, please, after this, we'll ensure that you have a copy of this report.
Thank you.
Hard copy. So that's the gift that we have for you, additional gift. And it's also available online. You'll be able to get a link after this so that you can interact with the report. Now, I know time has really pressed us, but what we want to do is maybe there could be questions. We may take a few questions from the audience on the report. I know we may need time to internalize that report. Numbers or being munched there quite a lot of details, but again, in case there's any question, we can get that addressed. Our lines of communication still open. Are there questions available online? Okay. So Ken, our ICT manager, can be able to advise the questions coming through. Please just raise your hand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for this. Mine could be a request that we may need a further research because there's a very strong case for bringing the youth on board in the boards in both private and public sector. So we want this to be backed by statistics on the effect or on the corporate performance and success of an organization when we have brought the youth on board. You've seen our country has started now, we have very young CSs, and we also have the CASs. And it's catching, there's a fire that is catching up. So this can be an interesting area of study.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Dr. Lydia Muluki. I think that's a very valuable comment. Again, as we say, for every research project, it actually opens another window of opportunity in terms of further studies. Nobody has monopoly of knowledge. I guess that will be a great opportunity for our partners when we move to this maybe next year when we do the project. Thank you very much. Any other question? Or maybe something to add on that? Thank you. Let's take from Mr. Ngomeli. We'll come back to him.
I think at the end of the day, we also have to look at the impact of that diversity to the brands and products in the market. Can the market reward companies with that kind of diversity? So I think that link needs to come out very clearly because we have a whole constituents that can vote with their pocket. How do we encourage them? And I look at a report by Iva. How do we connect that report to here so that, women is a big vote, an economic vote. How can they vote with their pocket going forward to companies that have got those kind of pillars? Thank you.
Thank you. That deserves a clap. Thank you very much, Mr. Ngomeli. I know we'll react to some of those comments. I know Dr. Murini Ndego also will make a comment, but let's take, there was a question from our dear friend here. Please give her the mic.
Thank you. Hello. Okay. My name is Wageshi Getatakirika, and I'm a trustee with New Faces, New Voices. I'm going to say the typical Kenyan thing. Mine is not a question, but a comment. And I really like, how you concluded with the call to action. And it would be really interesting to see how, as partners, we can take this together and then also take on that correlation about how does the market reward diversity and inclusion? How do we get organizations to flag the fact that they have taken diversity and inclusion into account, not just in leadership, but in all these other aspects? But again, how do we make that link? So I think the challenge is also back to the organizations about how they're communicating, about how they are, that they're inclusive, because this is something that we're seeing quite a lot of. We are a very young population in Kenya, and we've seen a lot of different surveys done at a global level that include Kenya as a market that say that our younger people are very interested in the social aspects of business. That businesses are not just about profits only, they're also about people, they're also about the planet, and that part and parcel of the people piece is the inclusion and the diversity. So I do like the comment about linking back up to the market and rewarding those organizations that do that. And again, how the challenge is to the organizations. How are you communicating this so that we with our pockets for the work that you're doing on inclusion?
Thank you very much, Wangeshi. You're spot on. How do we get that link? And that's very, very important. How do we balance the three P's? You've talked about the young people. It's not just about the pay, but also they also want to understand how you incorporate those aspects of diversity and inclusion in terms of management. And remember, it's not just about the board. It has to cut across in terms of even how you put your policies in terms of recruitment, how you attract talent, all the way up to the governance. Thank you very much. James, do you want to make a comment? React to? Oh, sorry, Zora, sorry.
Thank you for that. I just have a few pointers that I'd like to just maybe find out, and it's good to say that we're looking at a call to action that should follow this. Interestingly enough, on the PWDs, seeing that globally we have no data, would you be able to be the ones that can actually champion to actually be the first that can have impact? And then the other part of it would actually be on notably say the multinationals, the non-Kenyans kind of minimally represented in votes. Was this driven by the lack of the boards maybe being able to give information? Because again, we've seen a lot of investors that have actually come who are also supporting our SMEs and they're also part of the organizations and they are also board members. So would there be a reason why it's not obvious? And then also we know our multinationals who are also on the listed companies. I mean, we know very well that they're represented also by the non-Kenyans. So when we say that we have less non-Kenyans on boards, maybe we need to look into that. But better still also a bigger reward on the aspect of inclusivity, also to be able to look into organizations that are looking at the inclusivity and the ethnicity perspective. Could we start celebrating some of the organizations that could actually have like 10 tribes, on board, and also being able to, start having that so that the marginalized communities and other communities have actually also been considered. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Zora. Well put. Still huge opportunities there in terms of how we can extend the study and look at other areas. James, you want to make a comment? Just give him the mic, please. Maybe just reacting to some of those comments or questions raised, then we'll give it to Dr. Murithi Ndegwa. Get the other mic, please, if it's not working.
Thank you for these questions. And I'll start with a question from our chair, Dr. Morioki, regarding the need for further research on youth on board. And from the statistics, it has shown that this is one of the components that is essential in composition of the board. And I would agree that since this was the first survey of its kind targeting this variable, there's a need to increase, say, the sample size, also increase, say, the study population, just to know, or just to get to know what the statistics will tell about an enlarged data set. So going forward, we need to provide or to support this research with other studies, and one of the way maybe that will increase this knowledge is by focusing on an extensive sample size. And then talking about the question that was raised, or a comment that was raised by Mr. Ngomeli from COIPSA, and this was echoed by Ms. Wangeshi, how can the market reward diversity and inclusion? And I would just want to appreciate at this point something that had been started by NSC in collaboration with Equally, and also New Faces, New Voices, where in the last survey, they were ranking companies in terms of their gender and inclusion, and we had a number of the companies, and they went ahead even to shout and also to reward these companies. So you see, in taking this kind of initiative and rewarding in different sectors, say from a public perspective, from a private perspective, and also from a listed company perspective, this will be one way of promoting diversity and inclusivity, and also encouraging companies to participate. So maybe what we ask ourselves, maybe not as a country, but as a company, or as a corporate company, or as a private company, what is that we can do? Can we like reward, if it's KEPSA, you try and reward the members that constitute that organization, or the members under KEPSA. If it's NSC, we try like to start rewarding these members that are under NSC and so on. And by this, we'll be spreading the gospel to the public and to the private companies. And in terms of a comment that was raised by Ms. Zuhura regarding championing the idea of diversity and inclusion, and particularly in gender diversity, yes, I tend to agree with her, because in 2017, we were at 21%, and these countries were still at 40s. In 2019, we improved by 2%, and these companies were still at 40s. That was in 2019. So within 2019 and 2021, those are 2 years, and we have managed to improve all the way to 36. They are still at 40s. So using my statistical skills to project, if we work or if we maintain this trend, what would you be expecting maybe in the next 2 years? Assuming even like we just improve by say like 2% or like 4%, and that 6 will be now competing with New Zealand, with France, and also with the other companies. So, and in terms of nationals representation in our boards, maybe we may want to think about the franchising or the partnerships that are happening between the local companies and the external companies. What is it that has happened? And maybe this will be implying that there's no like more companies that are coming, or we are not partnering more with companies that are from external, which warrants a need for more studies, or there's a concern in this area, because one of the statistics, or from the findings of the study, we noted that nationals, or the inclusion of nationals in boards in Kenya is driving performance. So these are the area that we need to worry about, and also try to implement and advocate policies that will be helping us also to benchmark with the global professionals. And in terms of the ethnicity, yes, we need to extend this, because maybe we may say that it's a very sensitive area, but it has also been understood, and maybe further research could be explaining much that we don't know about this variable. So that would be my take on.
Thank you very much, James, for well-articulated answers. Let's give it to Dr. Muridhi Ndeva, just for additional comment. I know KIM is also in that space, what we're also doing for the youth.
Thank you very much, Tom, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I think James has articulated quite well in terms of some of the questions that were raised, but just to add maybe some other perspective in terms of what he said. One is that the beauty about research is that it triggers something. And I think the question we need to be asking ourselves is that, yes, the results have been presented, the call to action has been given, but what next? If you go to the question that was raised by Dr. Lydia Morioki, I think to me this is a very, very rich area that we need to think about. Why do I say this? We are told that 80% of the Kenyan population comprises of youth, meaning people aged 35 and below. But if you look at the statistics that James presented, the board composition in 2017 was about 55.6 in terms of years. That has improved to about 46 point something. But what does that mean if you dig deep? That those who are age 35 and below actually are completely underrepresented in the board situation or even in the C-suite. So as a country, it calls upon us to do something so that we don't have this marginalized group, marginalized in quotes, in the sense that they are not represented in where the decisions are made. And I think Wangeshi also raised a very pertinent question. Globally, people talk about the 3 Ps: people, profit, and planet. And right now, there's a lot of claim about climate change and so on and so forth. But as a country, it seems to me that there are some things that we also need to be thinking about which are very pertinent to our local situation. And this has been presented in terms of variables like gender, variables like age, variables like education. And the question that we need to be asking ourselves is, what do we need to do so that we can embrace what research has shown in terms of putting policies and putting legislation that is going to help us as a country to move forward. Zuhura, I think the question in terms of the non-Kenyans, I think that's something that perhaps we need to do a back check so that we see in terms of the responses that came, could there be a failure of disclosure, or could there be a specific situation that the non-Kenyans actually, the representation is that low? And in terms of ethnicity, I think the question that we need to ask ourselves is that if 76% of the main tribes or the main communities comprise of the board positions, if we flip it over, what about the minimum 10%? In other words, the smallest communities, what is the representation like? So that we're able to have a good balance between over-representation in maybe smaller communities or under-representation by the same communities. And I think the final question that comes in is, as the partners, Kim, NSC, KEPSA, New Faces, New Voices, this research has opened an opportunity. But the question that comes in is, how do we move forward? There are lots of things that James mentioned in terms of the call to action. And we are told in this country there's a lot of research that has been done. There are lots of good blueprints that are there in the shelves. But what we need to do now is move forward so that we can have a clear implementation plan, either through the public sector or through the private sector. And we are glad today that we have the CS represented here. So if there are things that we need to present or to tell the government that needs to be done, certainly I'm sure Honorable Elachi will be glad to hear. And the private sector is represented by the various captains. Mr. Geoffrey Odundo, he has a very big say at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So there are things that I feel we can move forward so that we move from just simply having presented to a call to action with clear deliverables and with time frame. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Daktari. I think you really expounded on that call to action. What do we need to do? So thank you very much. So it has come that time that we really want to listen to our chief guest. The moment of the hour is here. And so our chief guest, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Chief Administration Secretary, State Department for Public Service, is ready to address us. But for us to get that done, I want to invite Dr. Murithi Ndegwa, the Executive Director, came to officially invite our chief guest.
I think for me, I'll leave the platform. I'm not like Geoffrey. Our chief guest, Professor Margaret Kobia, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizen Affairs, Special Programs, represented by none other than Honorable Beatrice Elachi, who is a CS in the State Department. Dr. Lydia Muriuki, the Chair of KIM Governing Council. Mr. Odundo, who is the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Ms. Eva Muraya, representing KEPSA. Ms. Modoni Kamere, representing New Faces, New Voices. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning once again. It's our pleasure to welcome you all to this event, the Board Diversity and Inclusion Report Launch 2021. And we thank you all for being present and choosing to be part of this launch. We also wish to recognize and appreciate our partners, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, Nairobi Securities Exchange, the New Faces, New Voices Trust, for the support that you've given us in launching this diversity report. And I think they deserve a clap, don't they? Thank you very much, trustees and supporters, because without you, we would not have been here today. And without you, I don't think this report would have been the way it's been presented. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're all aware, the importance of diversity and inclusion, D&I, as you often call it, strategies in the boardroom, have grown. And this has become essential for boardrooms to be reflective of the shifting workforce and consumer demographics present in the modern world. It has also become recognized that one of the most effective ways to enhance corporate governance is by having a diverse board. And I think the statistics that was presented by James clearly illustrates that there is a correlation, positive correlation, between diversity and performance. Boards already know how to be intentional about seeking out individuals who would bring a variety of backgrounds, perspectives, and skills. Now they need to be just as intentional in creating an environment that enables those diverse voices to be heard both within their boardrooms and throughout the company. And I think this has been ably demonstrated through the research findings. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very pleased to see that the analysis from this report leverages the heterogeneity of progress across organizations to provide new evidence-based perspectives and advice relevant to diversity in the boardroom. And I'm really so glad when I look at the growth in terms of the performance. In 2012, as we've seen, D&I was at 12%, 2015, 18%, 2017, 21%, 2019 at 23%, and this year, despite the fact that last year was a COVID year, at 36%. I think the country deserves a clap. Well done to the captains of the industries. Well done also to the state corporations, because certainly something positive has been done. We all stand to learn from the author's methodology and findings that diversity must be seen as a strategic imperative to address fairness and equality, and as one that leads to better decision-making and board effectiveness. And I think it's been ably demonstrated, the correlation between diversity and performance. Diversity needs to start at the board and senior management level. However, it can only succeed with employee, customer, and investor support. And if firms remain vigilant to ensure that business practices are fair, they can start to change the culture and capture future opportunities. It reminds me of the story of the mustard seed. You're told a mustard seed grows to become, we don't read the Bible, goes to become something much, much bigger and something much humongous. Just like yeast, when you put yeast in dough, it generates, or it makes you be able to do the mandazi and so on and so forth. So really, we are saying that the journey of 1,000 kilometers per hour is beginning now for us to push forward for equality, maybe in the year 2030. And I believe it's possible. And those who believe it's possible, you can give a round of applause. At the Kenya Institute of Management, KIM, we are in congruence with these arguments that what makes effective boards thrive is healthy board dynamics, where information and a diversity of perspectives are shared to make effective decisions. We recognize that diversity and inclusion are multifaceted issues that we need to tackle holistically and to better engage and support all the underrepresented groups within the businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our hope that this report will stimulate new thinking and action on how all groups can genuinely feel included and be supported at the high table, because decisions are not made at the lower table, decisions are made at the high table. We would therefore urge each one of us to come together to make good on the inherent promise that all our people should be able to bring their best selves to work and unleash their full potential. None to be excluded, but everybody to be included. And by working together towards diversity and inclusion within our workplaces, industries, and the broader business community, we can cultivate a meaningful change in our society. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure now to warmly welcome our chief guest, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, to officially come and give her address and then launch the board diversity report. Yeshua.
that is why she's not here today. So once again, good morning, everyone. I will do the Kenyan way, all protocols observed. But before I go into my CS's speech, I think first I want to thank the team that has put in the report, and I would say that there are many issues that we've raised, and one of the things I think we need to do, even as the ministry, before I read this speech, is that one, the issue of diversity. I think we will have to change that question. Because if I look at the boards today, in terms of minority, I think we are doing so well in terms of minority. The question should now go back to peg on population and ask ourselves, if a minority is below 10% of that population, then definitely you'll find the big tribes sitting on those boards. But in terms of their numbers, they are well represented in each board, in each sector in this country today, based on the policy that we had after the post-election violence, where we said you can only sit on a board one person per region. So looking from 2007 to date, roughly 10 years, I think they are doing well. And then maybe we can change also and now look at religion. Let's not shy away. Look at religion and ask ourselves, but then you'll still have to go back to that question of the percentage. If religion, Christians are 80% in Kenya, definitely. And so if they are around 24%, 25%, they are doing they are 30%, they are doing well. Yes. So let me now go back to the humble duty that I was given. And the issue of disability, I think we can now go to the council, the Disability Council, and let's get more information from them. Because if we have been able to give them tax-free incentives, they are able to bring in anything they want to start their businesses without being paid, without being charged tax, then there must be. We must check and see whether they are also doing well, whether they are supporting that sector, and whether the leadership is also following up and ensuring in the different boards we can find them there. One of the things that the ministry I know is doing very badly, and not just the ministry, public service, is how do we build capacity for young people now to join not just the boards, but even ministry. In Parliament we are doing well. I think we are 85 young people who are in the bracket of young people, meaning that's a third of what is needed in Parliament. But within, I will tell you, in the ministry, I was even shocked in our own ministry. I know there's a huge gap in terms of age, and the worst is I can see many of them exiting, and we don't have this gap. And so career progression is very slow in government, very slow. And it's like we are, and Lydia will help me there, we've noticed that it's like they're not employing. So I'm very worried also, even in public service. It's a question, as who come in, we are asking them, why are you not employing young people to come in and fill the gap? Because very soon this team is leaving, and leaving with a lot of knowledge. The Mudawaras have gone. We were even trying to come up with an emeritus program in the Kenya School of Government so that they go there to impact this knowledge back to them. So, mentorship program. I'll start now by saying it is indeed an honor to join you this morning for the Kenya Institute of Management, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, Nairobi Securities Exchange, and New Faces, New Voices launch of the Kenya Institute of Management report on board diversity and inclusion targeting both public and private sector companies. At the onset, I commend this partnership, which has undertaken the extensive research on board diversity and inclusion targeting both public and private companies, and in so doing ensuring that good governance remains at the top of the agenda of respective companies and sectors. This will ensure that the Vision 2030 aspiration for Kenya is globally competitive and a prosperous country with highly quality of life of its citizens. Let me thank Kim for the commitment of issuing the diversity report that has seen 10 years of tracking gender diversity through the governance and leadership survey since 2012. It is exciting that through the Kim's report we are able to demonstrate the significant progress in board diversity from 12% in 2012 to 36% in 2021. Great milestones towards the 2/3 gender rule and realization of the 50-50 gender parity global aspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, an organization's board is a strategic organ in every business and its governance framework. As an essential component for sustainable growth, the need for relevant experience, diversity and inclusion in the boardroom remains at the front and center for investors, regulators, and other stakeholders. I'm therefore pleased to see that the analysis from this report by the Kenya Institute of Management, a positive and significant relationship exists between boards that are or exceed 30% of female diversity. They meet or exceed the 3rd gender rule, and overall organizational performance, board decision-making processes, and productivity. Age diversity is an essential component for boardroom composition. With a weak negative and significant correlation with performance, decision-making processes, and productivity, in future, this will bring more effective decision-making when it comes to resilience, risk, and strategic thinking. But that's not all. The report also points to the need of bringing about diversity at senior levels, and that comes from setting appropriate objectives and thinking carefully about how organizations can achieve them in terms of recruitment, career progression, succession, planning, and appropriate internal structures. Nevertheless, the rigor with which data was collected and analyzed yields new insights on the impact of diversity and how to make diversity work. We all stand to learn from the report's methodology and findings. At a minimum, future sustainability and financial success demand representation, equity, and inclusion. Case example, when the pandemic posed unprecedented challenges and strained the viability of many organizations, globally and in Kenya, many leaders developed effective, innovative solutions by leveraging diverse ideas and skills, sets, and experiences. This goes to show that when done, right, leveraging diversity, equity, and inclusion for the board can unlock multiple benefits. The key benefits include better decision-making to inform core governance issues, being at the leading edge of environmental, social, and governance issues, more equitably, representation of shareholder and stakeholder needs, as well as dynamic skills, backgrounds, and perspectives to anticipate and respond to changes in the market and consumer trends. As stewards of the public good, all social sector organizations, regardless of missions, are called on to embrace and celebrate our common humanity and the inherent worth of all people. In doing so, we must also acknowledge that a climate of growing intolerance and inequity is a challenge to our democratic values and ideals as encapsulated in our Constitution. Divisions along economic, racial, religious, and political lines have created an increasingly polarized society in need of healing, and the complex issues and dynamics at the intersection of race, class, gender, and sexuality call for deeper thinking as we seek to understand each other. While it may seem an amorphous undertaking, an impact takes time to materialize, and there is still so much to celebrate with regard to board diversity. The author's evidence has pointed to the positive impact of diversity on board and corporate performance, highlighting that boards can chart a clear way forward that embeds inclusion into every facet of the organization's workforce, and workplace. It is therefore time for the boards to recognize both their potential for influencing diversity and their responsibility to do so, not only for the sake of their own organizations and employees, but where relevant, also for the sake of their various stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, I wish to thank the 40 companies who participated and now take this opportunity to urge the remaining institutions from both public and private sector to participate in the future surveys. By so doing, strengthen the agenda of diversity and inclusion in the sector and the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank the keen team for putting together this timely report, which will play a key role in influencing policy and programming in Kenya in regards to advancing women equality in the workplace. Such findings will go a long way in shaping our Kenyan policy for gender equality and our strategies of empowering women to enable them to fully engage and advance at work and contribute effectively. I have no doubt that today's report will be a valuable resource for all involved in helping achieve gender equality, and I look forward to continuing to work with Kim and other stakeholders on this important journey. It is now my pleasure to officially launch the Kenya Institute of Management Board Diversity and Inclusion Report. Professor Margaret Kobier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our chief guest, Honorable Beatrice Elachi. You know, when you concluded your speech and said Professor Margaret Kobier, it reminds me, you know, we can also become professors through osmosis. It's our dream too, so thank you, we really appreciate you for that. And now we have come to that time that we now want to have a kind of a celebration as we do the launch. It's a big thing, it's not a small, so let's have that done. Ken, our ICT manager, is coordinating that. And of course, what we'll do, as we said, we'll have the booklets distributed to you. So we want to have, Ken, are you ready? So we'd like to request, please, the high table, our chief guest, please, if you could come in front together, with the entire team, Dr. Mireki, Damiva, Stradundo, Dr. Muridi. Zura, please join. Mudoni. So we'll stand here, Ken. There's a secret behind that, screen. So just. Very, very important.
I'm enjoying the walk.
So we want to officially launch this report. And the beautiful baby is about to be born. We are getting this ready. So here we go, Ken. Technology is failing us. I just saw it out. One, I don't know whether we can be able to bring back. The baby is being born. It's right there behind you, so face it. The surprise is there. Our new baby 2021 Board Advocacy is launched. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That marks the official launch of our board diversity, KM board diversity and inclusion report. Congratulations. Let's celebrate the launch. Let's celebrate the launch. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So that is the report, KM Board Diversity and Inclusion Report 2021, officially launched today on 14th of October. So please, yeah, have a feel of it, touch it. Oh, good. So we'll say 1, 2, 3. Oh, isn't it? 1, 2, 3. Oh. Congratulations. That's the KM Board Diversity Report launch today happening. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, our chief guest and distinguished guests that have supported that. So we can now say, as the chief guest declared, the KM Board Diversity and Inclusion Report 2021 has been officially launched. So thank you all the partners for the support. But again, as we say, in the African setup, it's also important also just to get to appreciate your guests and just say thank you for a job well done. We have the booklets now being distributed. We didn't want to do that before, otherwise people will be busy reading through. So please, and those are the booklets that we have. The entire report is there. And for the guests present in the room, we'll ensure that each of you get a copy of the same. So as a token of appreciation, we want to say thank you very much to our chief guest. So we'd request, please, our chief guest, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, if you could come forward and please receive a small gift of appreciation. Receive a small gift of appreciation that we prepared for you. And for that, I would want to invite KM Governing Council Chair, Dr. Lydia Murioki, please, if you could come forward. Mr. Odundo, the CEO NSC, please. And then Ms. Eva Muraya, please. If you could kindly come forward and present a small token of appreciation to our chief guest. In Africa, we say thank you. I know in public service they require you to declare, and of course the value would be less than what is declarable, but we'll get that presented.
I think we go back, yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Thank you very much. So the gift has been presented. That was Madam Mildred Matibe, head of KM School of Management and Branches, with us. Thank you very much. That is our token of appreciation for your time and just accepting to sit through with us. You are very busy, and just to get time to be with us, we really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So you may get back to the seats. Thank you very much, our chief guest. We really appreciate your time. And from Ken in appreciation of what you've done to us, we say asante, asante sana. Now, we are coming to the tail end of our program, but just before we do that, I just want to invite one person, Mr. James Ngomeli, just for 2 minutes. He's the sector board leader from KEPSA. You want to say something? Mr. James Ngomeli? It's called diversity. But I hope he's not going to talk about energy this time.
No. Thank you very much, and I want to thank the chief guest. I think you are also here in your own terms as a leader, championing for the women's rights. We have worked with you closely in the energy sector. You have been in our functions, and we really appreciate. Jeff, you have also been in our functions. We really appreciate your efforts of the team, and we really want to thank also the whole team that was here. I think the most important aspect is how do we turn around this, how do we tell this story in the marketplace? That's a big issue that I would like to leave it with the team here. Beatrice is, on the other hand, she's a politician. How do you take the diversity message to the people to inspire? You know, everything in government does, there has to be something that must incite the masses towards a certain direction. So how do we get that message out? How do we inspire the mothers who have daughters to know that one day they can sit in boards? So I think we need to develop stories, and to me that's the biggest angle we want to take. And also encourage more women to take the political power, because that's also a very big aspect of our training to join the board. Madam Ilachi, you spoke about that 3 years ago at Weston in our function, the political power. So the season is coming, and this is the only way. You will not be appointed in boards unless your efforts are seen somewhere. That is for sure. You will not sit and expect to be appointed. So your efforts are seen in activities that you do. And this is the word of encouragement that we want to tell you. So get out and let your skills be known. Yes, the degrees you have, but there's something extra that you must bring to the table and to the country. So with those few remarks, thank you very much, and Tom, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngomeli. He's actually a marketing guru, CIM, and of course doing a lot of things also in the space of energy, Women in Energy Conference, and also just trying to champion the same. And being a sector board leader, I think those words of encouragement are quite timely. Thank you very much. At this point in time, I would wish to invite Dr. Lydia Murioki to give us closing remarks. Dr. Lydia Murioki, the Chairperson, Care and Governing Council. So, Dr. Lee, please, have our attention.
And I need two of these. Okay. So our chief guest today, who is Professor Margaret Corbier, the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizens and Special Programs, ably represented today by Honorable CAS Arashi. We have our distinguished partners. This is CAPTCHA, we have NSC, and New Faces and New Voices. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I believe it's still good morning. Before I go into could be the closing ceremony, allow me to share with you something that has been my passion for quite a while. And there's a question that I always ask myself. Yes, indeed, we are celebrating board diversity. We are celebrating more women getting into the C-suite. But I ask myself, what value do we add into the boards? Because this is what will determine whether more of us will be included in the boards. And now that I have an opportunity with senior, female, and also the youth, because this is a question, you know, we are the late entrants. Just like the Boda came into the streets and they found everybody else, and now they have overruled everybody else. Yeah. We are saying we, the youth, and I'm not in that category, the youth, the women, and any other category that was not sitting in the C-suites, that was underrepresented. The question that, the answer or what will determine future inclusion is what the trade setters will do in those spaces that we've been given. So I pray and I urge myself and everybody here, the moment you get an opportunity, please do not fall victim. And I'm saying this for the male colleagues who are here. You know, there is that sense of invincibility. And had it not been for that, the boats will not be talking of diversity today. But there came that sense of we are invincible, boats are our domain, and then value addition deep down, and there was a need for board diversity and board inclusion. So I'll recognize, but he's left. I have my vice chair present here, Dr. Kwetho. He had to go away on something different. And also the other members of the governing council, through the virtual facilities, are able to be with us today. I also want to acknowledge in a very special way all those, earlier it was 116 that were joining us through the virtual mode. You can see that Corona came with both advantages and disadvantages. It's difficult to get 100, even when there was no Corona. Getting 100 and so people is a big deal. But now you can see they are there, and they could be more than that. So allow me to also say this before I come to the closing ceremony, that yes, indeed, for me, this would be the beginning of a journey. We are calling it the end of a journey, yes. I would call it the end of the first phase of this journey. You've done the research, and you've come up with the findings, and we now launch the report. This is the Clean Board Diversity and Inclusion Report. But the tragedy, and this has always been a tragedy, I've worked for quite a while, is that most of these documents are very nice pieces in the archives. Very nice pieces in the archives. And very little is done about them. So my prayer today is that this will not be another piece scrambling for space in the archives. But we shall now go into the most important part of this exercise, and this is the hard part. It can be exciting if you choose to, because we must translate these recommendations into strategies, and then go into the phase of the implementation. I want to say this without fear of contradiction, that we are not very good in the follow-through, be it private sector or public sector. Like now we've launched with a lot of pomp, but when it comes to the implementation, there shall not be pomp. To just be silent. So I'm hoping that we shall do into that difficult part and do the implementation so that the report and the strategy and the recommendations that have been found, it has been a tedious exercise, find the light of day. I want to say this and say, yes, everybody here, both private and public, you can be forgiven up to yesterday because you didn't know that there is a positive and significant correlation between board diversity and corporate performance and firm success. So for that one up to yesterday, up to a few hours ago, we can forgive ourselves. We can forgive ourselves and give ourselves the benefit of doubt. But I won't tell myself and tell all of you that none of us will be forgiven from this point on if we do not take appropriate strategies and implement and put into action these recommendations. We are hoping that we shall not come here for another board diversity and inclusion launch, phase 2, and then we go to 3. We are very good in that. The 2, reloaded. We shall having the board diversity and inclusion report reloaded. We don't want you to get into that. Let's get into the actions and tell everybody loud and clear. So now going into what we are supposed to do today, is my pleasure to participate in this closing ceremony. Is indeed the end of the event, but the beginning of what is even more important than what we are doing today. Our presence here, especially for Kim, shows the commitment and that we have towards board diversity and inclusion. I want to thank all the speakers that participated. I take note with great interest the variable interventions, and want to thank all of you for the active participation. A special upload for Kim, those that are there, and even the entire, even the branches. We want to thank Kenya Private Sector Alliance, the Nairobi Security Exchange, the new faces, new voices. Allow me, from where I come from, Mount Kenya, sometimes you find there's no R and R, so I hope you follow, because I'm just about to say that we are launching. So just understand is that we are launching the board diversity and inclusion report. This is exactly the kind of debate we want to have, because it stimulates our thinking. But dissemination and not following it through to the final end will be a job not well done. So let's follow it up through to the end. This forum also creates an engaging platform. We are diverse actor. I'm from private, you are from private, we are from public, we are the youth, we have those that are in our ages, where we are told that as you age, productivity goes down. So all of us are here, and we are discussing this important document, the diversity and inclusion in leadership. There is enough evidence, just like I've said earlier, it has been proved, we are simply proving it again, that companies of all sizes must give this report higher priority if you want to improve your corporate performance. It's been proved. So if you want corporate performance to improve, you want better results, both public and private, this is the report that you need to look at and see what has been the findings of this team. There has been important messages. The important message is that we must change. There has to be continuous proportion of the board diversity in both public and private. So we look forward as Kim, and allow me to say at this point, we look forward to a very fruitful and engaging partnership between ourselves and you, and we shall not disappoint as we go into the next phases of this exercise. I had Eva already mention, agreeing with the ED, that we need to form a small think tank so that the recommendations here can see the light of day. We are happy we have none other than the CAS and the right ministry. So where we need support, I know it will be very, very forthcoming. I trust that all of us will take further inspiration on how to foster the new change that is required. I want to thank you all as I close for attending this function. And I hope to also thank you and urge you to look at the opportunities that this report provides so that you implement them and see the advantages. As I close, I urge ourselves, let us leverage on both diversity and inclusion, and the results are obvious. Thank you very much for listening to me, and let's continue implementing these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Dr. Lydia Murioki, for your closing remarks. And thank you everyone, thank you our chief guest. It's very rare to have a chief guest sitting through all this, and that's an honor to us. We are busy schedule. We really appreciate you, and of course we are not taking that for granted. So thank you all, those who attended, of course physically, and also our guests that have joined virtually. We thank you all, and we want to say guests can now leave at their own pleasure. So let's implement our good day.